question of what do I do if I've been hurt in some manner and need medical attention, but I'm concerned now that seeking medical attention may put me at greater risk because hospitals and doctors' facilities, I may be exposed to COVID. This is a question that doesn't just come up all the time. It came up yesterday when my wife called me and said, oh my God, our son just fell down outside hard. His elbow is all swollen up. I'm putting ice on it. I'm concerned. What do I do? Well, so I think you would tell a client the very same thing that I told my wife, which is, all right, let's assess the situation here. And if it is not, first of all, life-threatening, then an ER probably is unnecessary because emergency rooms are for that. For emergencies that rise to a level where you might have a life-threatening or permanent injury situation. So assess whether the injury is of that type. Is it life-threatening, respiratory-related, something imminent that can cause permanent damage? You got to go to the ER, irrespective of COVID. That's it. You just got to go. If it's something less than that that you think can be dealt with at a walk-in clinic, then you go there. So it's sort of a scale in terms of the serious nature of the injury, the imminent nature of the injury. In other words, what level of medical care does it require in what time period? And then you assess a response. So there's a lot of things you can do short of running to an ER and then maybe exposing yourself, unfortunately, to COVID, or overwhelming ERs, which are getting overwhelmed by COVID patients before you have to put yourself in that situation. So all of these walk-in clinics, even though they're getting overrun with testing, but they're fantastic options because they can rule out fractures and things like this that are very frequent occurrences, such as my son's situation. And that's exactly what we did. I said, let's ice the injury down. Let's take a look at the level of swelling. Where is his pain scale at? What is his functionality in terms of being able to move the joint? Obviously, there was no blood. There was nothing like this. So after a period of time where, in my son's case, let's say, where the injury didn't resolve, which was really a matter of an hour or two, and the swelling increased, we then collectively made a determination, hey, let's get him to a walk-in clinic so we can get an x-ray and see what we're dealing with there. And that's exactly what we did. In that case, fortunately, the x-ray was negative. He got a wrap, a sling, an ice pack, some pain medication, and then within a short period of time, he's improved. So you want to assess each situation individually and then scale it, which is, by the way, it's just called a trauma code. It's exactly a triage is really what they call it. And triage is a term of art in the medical field that was invented on the battlefields, really. How do you triage people? So that's really what you should employ with COVID, which is kind of like a war situation, right? So triage it, but do it yourself and say, well, what level am I dealing with of injury? If somebody is bleeding profusely, if they're not conscious, if it's a heart attack situation, something you deem life-threatening, you're calling 911 and you go into the hospital. And the COVID risk doesn't really compare to the risk of not treating this thing. And if it's lower than that, you triage lower than that. It's a triage 2, it's a triage 1. It doesn't require the imminent response, the emergency response, and you deal with it in that fashion. You also have the added benefit now of telemedicine, which is much more frequent. So you can get access to a lot more help without having to be in an environment where two things are happening. One, you're putting yourself at risk via potential COVID exposure, but two, you're also maybe overwhelming the medical system itself, the hospital system, which is being overwhelmed by COVID patients. So you have a duality going on here that you need to pay attention to. And so the days of everybody running to the emergency room for everything under the sun, I don't know if we should say those are the days. I don't know if there ever were days like that, but my mother-in-law, let's say, is elderly and Dominican. It doesn't speak English very well. So she just seems to have a built-in mind process of if anything goes wrong, she goes to the emergency room. I mean, anything. That's what she used to do. Not anymore now, because we're around to help her and say, no, that's really not how you address these things. So there is a certain segment of the population, for whatever reason, I mean, my mother-in-law is it within that, who previously would think, go to the emergency room for almost anything, for whatever reason. Maybe that was a financial, a socioeconomic status, or just the previous experience. I don't know what it was, but that type of situation is not what you want to do now with COVID. You cannot run to the emergency room for anything under the sun. You need to assess what it is, take a deep breath, think about it. Of course, if that being it's not urgent, life-threatening, and then decide what to do.